So before I start this video, I want to say something I want to do. I want to do a question and answer video. So I want everybody, I know some of you have been watching me for probably more than a year, and I want everyone, or at least those who want to, ask me, some questions that I can answer, and I will answer up to 25 questions. So I'll take the best ones. If only 5 of you ask me questions, I'll answer all 5 questions. If 30 of you ask me questions, I will answer 25 questions, and 5 of you will be completely ignored because that means I either don't like you or I just can't make a video that's 2 weeks long. Ask me questions. I want to make a question and answer video. If you don't do it, I'm never going to eat vegetables again. So it's been about 2.5 months since I got the cats. They're getting pretty big. Tomorrow they're going to be 6 months old. And Shaka likes sleeping on me. And Khan likes stepping on the laptop. She likes sleeping on me also, but not so often. But thank you for closing my laptop. No more music for me today. But they're really well behaved, I have to say, even when I'm sleeping. They just sleep near my feet and really don't wake me up. Unless I sleep late, then they start climbing up the curtains. But for the most part, I have to say they're really well behaved. And time goes by fast. 2.5 months. Now they're 6 months old. I did hear before I came to Alaska that some people order on Amazon, to save some money. And I read a lot about how many places on Amazon or eBay won't deliver to Alaska. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that in case you're wondering or you're planning on coming to Alaska. Now, the first winter I was in Alaska, I was in Valdez, and I did order a few foods from Amazon. Powdered potatoes, I know, because I like them, and some like bags of rice. And I never had any places refuse to ship to Alaska. Now, these were smaller items. I imagine for bigger items it would be a problem, but I didn't need to order any big items when I first came to Alaska. And I did that for most of the first year I was here. Any of like the side dishes I ordered from Amazon, never had any problems. And since I've been in the interior, there are some foods that are more expensive than they were in Valdez. But what's happened is, number one, you get tired of ordering on Amazon because you're ordering like 12 packages of the same flavored potatoes or the same flavored rice. And what you start realizing over time is you've got 9 more of these cheddar and broccoli flavored rice, and you would really like something different. So you wind up going to the grocery store and paying a little bit more to get, a different flavored one. And I stopped ordering, for the most part, any foods on Amazon because over time, you're tired of not really getting to eat what you want to eat on that particular night. So I would say that's something maybe to expect, that maybe at first you say, I'm going to save a couple of dollars, and you get 12 packages of cheddar and broccoli rice and 12 packages of, another flavor. And then you're just going to get tired because there is a limit on Amazon. They only have, let's say, 3 or 4 flavors of mashed potatoes or rice or other things. If you want to get iced tea, they only have 1 or 2 brands of iced tea. And they're not going to have the one more than likely that you like the most or that you find out tastes the best when you're here. The grocery store is going to have one that's even better. So what you can do is expect that you're not going to be using Amazon to buy foods forever. You're going to wind up just accepting I have to pay a little bit more to get what I want. For some things, though, you will always go to Amazon and buy stuff. And what I've also found since I've been here is that it doesn't matter if the item is small or big and heavy. It's just a coin toss whether they ship to Alaska. And I would say about 95% of the companies on Amazon, at least the things that I bought, they all ship to Alaska. You even get the free shipping if you're a Prime member. So I wouldn't have any concern that you can't get what you want on Amazon. If one place doesn't ship it, there's plenty of other people on Amazon who sell the same things. You may have to pay $1 more for them, but you will get pretty much everything you want. And I'll give you an example of something that's heavy. Cat litter. Now I bought 8 16-pound bags for the reasons that I know I'm going to use it. And the second reason is I don't like going to the post office once every month, let's say, and picking up 4 bags because they're heavy and, they put 4 in a box. And the other thing is the reason I buy these on Amazon is because they cost me $12.50 per bag, free shipping. And in the grocery store here, they cost $19.99 for 1 bag. So I'm saving, $7, a little bit more than $7 per bag. And what I also buy is dry kitten cat food because they don't have any kitten cat food here in the grocery store. And of course, that's something that I knew. I looked up before I got the cats, and I bought enough kitten cat food to last them for about 10 months. So you do have to plan a few things if you're living in remote Alaska, whether it's with cat food or cat litter or foods for yourself. But that's the way it works with Amazon, and you're going to use it. It's great to have. What you don't find on Amazon, you can also get some of that stuff on eBay. And the majority of sellers are going to ship it to you in Alaska. So what's kind of neat in the snow is to see all the tracks from all of the critters running around. And most of it's rabbits. There's also, I guess they're these winter moles. I don't really know what they're called. I have to look it up. And you always see their tiny tracks, going across the snow. And then the rabbits are the busiest, though. They're all over the place. Here's a good one. Hopped along there. More rabbits. More rabbits. It is good, though, that I saw the moose tracks and know if any moose come across, which they don't. And I try not to walk on different ways to the garage because I want to see what's crossing the driveway. It's the rabbit. That's that rabbit that lives back there. I honestly, I'm not really seeing the rabbits that often. It's all the same back there. It's all over the driveway there. But I'm not seeing the rabbits much now. I guess with the snow, they're coming out mostly in the dark. And also because there's less light now, you don't have as many opportunities to see things. I usually see the squirrels run across right here. Always the same spot. And I'm going with this as a squirrel because it's a bit messier. And there, that's the squirrel. That's the rabbit. Squirrel, rabbit. Squirrel, human. Also, what I like to do is go through the back and get out to the shed. You know what's funny? There's a lot of rabbit tracks in the backyard. I don't know how they're getting in here. The There's no holes in the fence. There's no way they can get under the fence. And I looked all around the entire fence and I don't see any way the rabbits can get in, but I guess there's something that I maybe missed. Rabbits, oh, they can get in there, definitely. See, caught that already. And that's a rabbit hopping around outside. I like coming over here, which I haven't done for a few days because you only see rabbit tracks, and see if anything other than this rabbit. I can see nothing's gotten in the shed where I'm putting the garbage for the winter. And I like coming out here because this is where I saw the moose tracks. And not only that, but this is also where occasionally, I'm not going to say the stray dogs, but someone's dogs get out and they always come back this way. And I just see a lot of tracks there, but I can tell no dogs have been around for a while. Just rabbits. And I also like to look out to see if there's any human tracks, even though I've never seen any except for mine. You do see back there, I don't know how many feet that is from my fence, where that's where my property would end at the fence. There's a yellow building back there, and I have heard that's a greenhouse from the guy who lives on that property. I don't know where his house is. That's just kind of like a greenhouse thing that he built. And you couldn't really see it in the summer because, you know, the trees were blocking it. Now that it's snowing, I think things stick out a little bit more and I can actually see his greenhouse now. Maybe steal a few vegetables. I don't like vegetables. If it was a chocolate house, I'd definitely be in prison by now. I think there's also a misunderstanding or confusion about weather in Alaska, especially in the winter time. And the reason for that is when people tell you what the weather is like here, it really varies depending on where they live. So that's why maybe you look at some videos and it tells you the temperatures are -40 and other videos tell you it's not that bad. Most of them tell you the worst of the worst because that's what gets people to watch things. Nobody wants to watch somebody say, oh, temperatures here only get to 0. It's not exciting. It's not why you're watching YouTube. You want to hear the guy who's living in -63 Fahrenheit and his nose has icicles on it every time he comes inside. And the worst temperatures, the coldest temperatures are, let's say, the far north, or let's say it's easier north of Fairbanks. That's where it's going to get really cold. But for the rest of Alaska, it's not, you know, -60, -80, whatever you see in Ice Road Truckers and the reality shows like that. And like the people living in off-grid in little cabins where it's -40. Even in those videos, it's a little misleading, and I don't think people do it on purpose. You know, creators' job is to make their videos interesting. And I'm not really good at that because I'm not good at making reality videos. I just pretty much do my best, as you know, to tell you how it is without any exaggerations, or at least I try not to exaggerate any, because I would rather fewer people watch my videos and it actually, you know, maybe gives them a better idea of what to expect when they're coming to Alaska, rather than to give them the worst of the worst and make it seem like, you know, it's a tough place to live and you're not going to survive unless you're tough. Stuff like that. If I want to see that, I'll watch a reality show, which I don't watch because I can't stand these, because I like to know, you know, what actually happens. I don't want to be entertained with lies or misleading information because that doesn't entertain me. I'm more entertained. One thing that drives me crazy when I see a movie based on a true story and you know they're putting in things that aren't real, trying to make the movie more exciting, and then I go back and I read the original story, what actually happened. If those movies just made the real story of what actually happened, that would be so entertaining. But instead they have to have some alien come and suck up the grandmother, and then everybody goes, oh no, I don't get this. So I'm a little different, I guess, like that when I watch these movies. And also when I make the videos, I don't see the point of making exaggerations just to get more views. But let's talk about the weather. Like I said, I think there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of misleading information out there about it. As far as, let's say, earthquakes first, doesn't really have to do with weather. And I'm not a meteorologist, so I'm not going to use the correct terms for, what the weatherman would use on the news. But for earthquakes, for example, we know there's earthquakes in Alaska. And you see lots of videos of people saying they feel the earthquakes. But again, it depends on where you live with how often you're actually going to feel the earthquakes. Where I live in the interior, we don't feel many earthquakes. Some people will get, a few little shakes, but I've been here now for over 2 years and I haven't felt a little shake. There have been earthquakes. In fact, last week there was a 6.0 earthquake about 3.5 hours from here. I want to say it was in Willow. And Willow is about 3.5 hours, I think 3 to 4 hours to the south of us. Underneath Willow, to the south of Willow is the Kenai Peninsula. They felt the earthquake. Anchorage, which is to the west of Willow, they felt the earthquake. Fairbanks, which is about, I want to say 100 and something miles to the north of us, they felt the earthquake. Everybody around us felt the earthquake. We didn't feel the earthquake. I don't know how that works because, again, I'm not a weatherman, a meteorologist. I'm not studying earthquakes. I don't understand how everybody around us can feel the earthquake and we can't. Maybe we have a protective earthquake shield around the town. But I do know that 12 miles to the north of us, they felt the earthquake pretty strong. And we didn't. So something is wrong with that whole situation. I don't understand how that works. But what I'm getting at is that it really depends on where you live with how often you're going to feel the earthquakes and how bad the earthquakes are going to be. I get the impression, and I may be wrong, maybe some people from Fairbanks or Anchorage can correct me. It seems like they do feel a lot more earthquakes in Anchorage, regardless where the earthquakes are in Alaska or in the ocean, than other parts of Alaska. I know that in Valdez, they get a lot of shaking from the earthquakes, but it's really not a lot. They get a lot, but they don't feel much of it. I was there for the 8 or 9 months, and one time I felt a little shaking for about 3 seconds, but there are hundreds of earthquakes in Alaska every day. And you don't really feel the majority of them. And to me, it seems like the people who feel the most earthquakes are the ones living at least in Anchorage. Fairbanks, I haven't heard many people in Fairbanks feeling many earthquakes, but I know they felt the one from last week. And again, I don't know why we didn't feel it. It just depends on where exactly you live. You can even live 12 miles from me and you're going to feel it. So it's difficult to explain things like that in videos, like what to expect, because the way I see it, expect the unexpected and don't expect what you think you're going to get, because it always seems to be that way. You're going to expect to see animals, you're not going to see them. You're going to expect to feel earthquakes, you're not going to feel them. You're going to think nothing, you're not going to notice anything, and then you're going to feel earthquakes and have moose on the roof of your house. It's just the way it works. And as far as weather goes, that's even more confusing than the earthquakes. And I can only tell you about the places where I lived and what I experienced. But, for example, if you're in Valdez, it is not going to get under 0 degrees often. If you're in Fairbanks, it's going to get, to as low as -40, for example. It's not going to happen as often as people make it seem. -30 in the -20s, I think would be more realistic what to expect. Where I live now in the interior, I think that's where I can give you the most accurate weather. Although, keep in mind that the weather in Alaska, I think in all of Alaska, is quite unpredictable. And depending on where you live in Alaska, it's more unpredictable than other places. And where I live now, as most of you know, it's near the Denali National Park. The weather here, to me, from where I've lived in Alaska, is the most unpredictable weather that I've ever lived around. And something that I could see being a problem for many people is the weather changing rather quickly. For example, just a couple of days ago, it was I think it got down to -13, and the next day it was 29. That's not really bad. I mean, some people might say that's a big change. It's really not a big change, because if you think about it, the next day it was 0 degrees at 8 a.m. At 9 a.m. it was 7 degrees, and at 10 a.m. it was down to -5. And many people might be saying, well, that's not that bad. And it really isn't, because if you were watching my videos last winter, there was that day, it was mid-December, and it was -17 degrees at 10 a.m. And at 11 a.m., it was 29 degrees. That's a huge change in temperature in less than an hour. And you notice it, something it might affect with you, your I don't want to say your sinuses, but it does affect your sinuses a bit. Even now when I'm talking, I notice my sinuses are a little off, because the weather is going up and down a lot right now. And it's not pollen, it's just the change in the weather affects your sinuses somehow. Again, I don't know how that works, but there is something that you may have heard, especially what I've heard in the interior. A few people who moved here from the lower states, they said that they get nosebleeds during the winter. And I thought, well, I hope I don't, because that's never comfortable. And what I've noticed is I don't get nosebleeds, but when I blow my nose, and this is disgusting, I know, but I'm just trying to explain things. When I blow my nose in the winter, and you're blowing your nose often, because every time you go outside, you're dripping from your nose. It's just going to happen. There's like a little bloody mucus in that. And so I can understand, those people now. At first I thought your nose is bleeding because it's cold. That doesn't make sense. It's not because it's cold. It's, I guess, because the temperatures are changing so quickly, and it somehow causes some people to get bloody noses. I haven't had bloody noses, but again, you notice there's a little blood mucus when you're blowing your nose. I don't really get bothered with my sinuses, but it does, change your voice a little bit. Like maybe I might sound a little sick now, and I'm not. It's just the change in temperature is messing with your sinuses. That's, I would say, the only thing that the fluctuation in the weather's, affects me. And it's not every day. It just happens to be today. But going back to the temperatures where I live in this part of the interior, if it gets, 15 degrees or warmer in the winter, it becomes very windy outside. Every single time it happens. And if it gets colder, in the minus temperatures, the wind just disappears. So I've said this before, it actually feels much nicer when it's minus 17 than when it's 25 in the winter here, because the winds are miserable in the winter. But if you do live in this part of Alaska or you're planning on moving here, you should expect the temperatures to change several times during the day. And it's not every day, but it's more often than you would think. The last thing about the weather that I would say is it's something else that many people don't explain in videos. They'll show you a video, it's minus 30 right now. Keep in mind, at least where most of these people are living, it's not staying minus 30 for the entire winter. The temperatures are changing quite often, not only in this area. I'll tell you, like a typical winter here would be where I live. Again, it depends on where you live, but in the interior where I live, there will be 5 days, 7 days maybe of minus 27 down to minus 17 or up to minus 17. But what happens is then you're going to have 3 or 4 days where it's in the 20s. And then 3 or 4 days later, it's going to be back down to minus 17. So you do get breaks in between the really cold weather. I have yet experienced, 2 weeks of minus 20 degrees. And I don't think that is a common occurrence. It's always getting warmer and colder, warmer and colder. It's not just frozen at minus 27 for 3 months or even for 3 weeks. It can happen. Until now, it hasn't happened for me. So even when you hear people say it's minus 30, it's for a couple of days. Maybe it's for a week. The other thing to keep in mind, and this is also something that I think many people don't talk about, but that's because many of the people who make those videos, from what I've seen, have always lived in Alaska, or they've been in Alaska for such a long time, they kind of forgot what it was like back in where they were living before. And what happens is, and no one's going to believe this, but trust me when I say this is what happens. When it is minus 10 degrees here for 4 days or 5 days, the 6th day you go outside and you think to yourself, geez, this feels like it's 30 degrees. It's actually really nice. And then you look at the temperature and it's 15 degrees. Your body adjusts very quickly to the cold weather, and there is no difference between minus 10 degrees here and 15 degrees 6 days later than if you're in, let's just say, New Jersey, and it's 30 degrees today and 4 days later it's 60 degrees. You know how you feel? You go, this is really nice weather. It is the exact same when it's minus 10 here and 6 days later or 4 days later, it's 15 degrees. You feel exactly the same. Your body is giving you that it's warm. It's telling you it's warm. You're not going to take off your jacket and run with shorts through the yard and celebrate, but you're going to notice you're hot when you have that winter jacket on, and you unzip it. And so nobody, I've told my friends in Virginia, I told my brother, my dad, nobody believes me. I went outside, it's 15 degrees. I said, Jesus, feels like it's 30. Nobody believes it. Your body adjusts, and 30 to 60 minus 10 to 15, there's no difference. You feel exactly as relieved, and it's the same feeling. That's the best way I can explain it. I would say whether you've been in Alaska your whole life or you just moved here 6 months ago and it's your first winter, the first month of the winter is rough for everyone. The Alaskans go through the same things that you're going through. It's cold, it feels colder than it is. That first month, you have to get through. After the first month, from the second to the fifth month, let's just say, it's not bad anymore. Your body adjusts to it. And that's the same. I know there's going to be some Alaskans who say, cold never bothers me. It's the same with some people who live in Idaho, New Jersey, Colorado, Montana. Some people, cold doesn't bother them as much, but many people exaggerate that because they want to, seem cool. I could wear a t-shirt in cold. Very few people don't get affected by the cold. The majority of people feel just like you do, just like I do. So Thanksgiving was just this past Thursday, and I decided to make myself some Thanksgiving dinner because it's actually the first Thanksgiving dinner I have had in 35 years. I don't really like turkey, so I just got these thin slices of turkey. Not that much, I have more, I'll eat it later. Just didn't want it to get cold. Got potato salad, got my stuffing, got a lot more potato salad, a lot more stuffing, and my black olives. So happy late Thanksgiving.